right, what's going on, everyone? Hey, welcome to Real Life. And welcome to week one of our very first message series of 2026 called First and Best. And over the next couple weeks, we are going to talk about an area of life that if you got any area of life straight in 2026, this ought to be it. Because this area of life affects all the others. It affects your relationships and your career, where you live, and your relationship with God. And there are a couple decisions that you and I can make right here and right now that will set us up for growth in all of 2026. Now, last week, Dante did a great job of teaching, and he brought up New Year's resolutions. And like him, I don't know if you're a resolution kind of person. This is about the time in the calendar year where we declare to our loved ones our intentions of the kind of person that we want to be, or the goals that we want to accomplish, or maybe you're more of a private resolution kind of person, so that way when you break it on January 12th, it's like no big deal. And one observation I have about resolutions is that rarely do they come totally out of the blue. Rarely do you hear someone say, my resolution is to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in 2026, even though I never broke a sweat in 2025. Or I'm going to learn to speak French fluently to impress a girl. I'm going to do one of those. It usually sounds like this. I'm finally going to do the thing I should have been doing all along. I am going to take seriously the thing that I wasn't taking seriously last year. And so it's like a diet, or saving more, spending less, going on a weekly date night with your spouse. But here's the danger of waiting for a calendar turn to make some of those decisions. You see, it's dangerous to make essential things optional. There are some things in our life that we just know we got to do these. Like we have to, we must do, we got to do. But because they require some discipline, or they may force us to make a difficult decision, the easiest way of getting out of that responsibility is to make it not essential, but make it optional, make it a choice. See, no matter who you want to be or the kind of person you're becoming, a goal to achieve, there are really three categories to the decisions that you need to make. Some things are essential. Like that you got to do them, they're mandatory, you have to be able to do these kind of things. Then there are things that are beneficial, like it would be good for you to do, but it's not universal for everyone, but it'd be kind of like a missed opportunity if you didn't. And then there are things that are purely optional. Like it's just personal preference, it's your personality. Not everyone has to do it, it's up to you. So let's start out with like a fun example. Say you want to be a really good Lakers fan, all right? It would be optional to own a jersey. You don't have to, but you can. But if you own a jersey, you don't want to be basic and get a Luka jersey. You want to do a little research, go vintage, like a Kurt Rambis or a Nick Van Exel. And then all the other fans will look at you and be like, oh, that's a ball knower, all right? Like they know what's going on, that's great. Don't have to, that's totally optional. It would be beneficial for you to actually watch the games, all right? Instead of just waiting for the highlight package to pop up on your Instagram feed, sit down and watch the whole game and see how the team is doing. But one thing that I have learned is undeniable and totally essential for every Lakers fan is that you must believe that Kobe is better than LeBron, all right? Like that's the only way. See? I've yet to meet a Lakers fan that would disagree with that statement. It's just not negotiable. Now, when it comes to our relationship with God, there are the same things. That there are some things that are essential to following Jesus, and in fact, if we don't do these things, it would be insincere to call ourselves a committed follower, a Christian. Things like prayer, or reading the Bible, or being baptized. These are so clearly scripturally commanded that anything less than that, it's something. It's just not really following Jesus. Then there are some things that are beneficial, like not everyone has to do these, but man, it would be great, like having a spiritual mentor. I cannot exaggerate the benefit of having someone wiser and older and more experienced than me speak into my life in every single season. And they encourage, and they coach, and they counsel. And most often, their counseling sounds like this. chill out. Right? That's pretty much always what it comes down to. Don't freak out about everything. And then there's some things that are totally optional. Like this is just up to you, your personal preference. Like maybe someday you'll want to travel overseas and serve an under-resourced group of people with your particular skill set. That's amazing. And not everybody has to do it, but you can make a big difference. And God will have your attention more because you're outside of your comfort zone. That's awesome. Just not universal. Or there are some church traditions where when they show up for a worship service like this, they like to dress up. They like to look nice. That's where the term Sunday best comes from. Totally fine. What they're doing is they're trying to honor God with their presentation of their physical bodies. That's totally fine. That's optional, as you can tell from where you're sitting right now. My joke about real life is that anytime my shirt has buttons, I feel overdressed, right? This is a very laid-back kind of place, so totally optional. Now, here's really two dangers with these categories. And the first one is taking anything that truly is optional, personal preference, but then we try to make it essential for everyone else. And we say, my way of doing things and my preferences and my style are the only way of doing things. Maybe someone said that to you before. But the danger that we're going to talk about over the next couple weeks is taking these things that God has just undeniably declared to be essential to following him, but because they require discipline and they force us into making some tough choices, or maybe they lead us to a life that no one else in our life is really leading, the easiest way of wiggling out of that conviction is to take it from the essential category and slide it over here to optional as if it was a choice to begin with. And so over the next couple weeks, we're going to establish this truth. Giving is essential to following Jesus. You would be incredibly hard-pressed to take an unbiased and sincere look at the Bible and come to any other conclusion. Now, I know that there's all kinds of debate as to the math of it all, the percentages of it all, the numbers of it all, and we'll unpack that in the coming weeks. But what we want to do today is establish the baseline that God has temporarily put money and resources into all of our hands, and they're not ours forever. And how we use them when we have them reveals to us to whom we truly belong. What we give reveals who we trust. Now, I want to make a quick acknowledgement that every single time here at Real Life, there's someone here that you wouldn't even call yourself a Christian yet. You got questions and you're spiritually curious, and we are so glad that you are here. And in the next couple weeks, you are going to hear a distinctly Christian worldview about money and resources and stuff. And our conviction is we would never expect anyone who doesn't follow Jesus to act like they do. And so you can listen in. You can listen in on this. But what I also don't want you to do is check out. Because what I think you're going to hear over the next couple weeks is this Christian view of our stuff and the temporary nature of it all. And the fact that money makes promises that it cannot keep, and you're going to hear that, and it's going to make sense to you, and it's going to give you one more compelling reason to seriously consider following Jesus. Now, today at the beginning of our series, we're actually going to begin at the beginning of the Bible. So if you have a Bible or a Bible app, I want to invite you to Genesis chapter 4. It is the fourth chapter in the entire Bible, so hopefully it's easy to find. And in the book of Genesis is where we discover the origins of everything. The origins of the physical world and our daily rhythms and the existence of humankind. And in Genesis chapter 2, we meet the first humans, Adam and Eve. And in chapter 4, we discover that they had two sons named Abel and Cain. And today we're going to read their story. We're going to pick it up in verse 2, chapter 4. It says, when they grew up, Abel became a shepherd, while Cain cultivated the ground. And when it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked very dejected. Here we meet two brothers, And on the surface level, it appears as if they are almost identical people. They have the same parents, Adam and Eve. They both have a job. They are both good at their jobs. Abel's flock is growing because there are more lambs. Cain's crops are producing food. Both of their jobs aren't even self-interested. They provide a necessary good for the community. And both brothers understand that part of following God is to give a gift to God from what they made. Now, this is in the day before Venmo or currency, so they were literally bringing lambs, they were bringing food. The all-powerful and all-knowing God did not need that lamb's wool to make a sweater to keep him warm, and did not need carrots from Cain's garden to stay full. This was for the brothers' good. See, giving as an act of worship is a reminder of whose all this is in the first place. Abel would have grown up with his dad, Adam, telling him the story of the day that God invited him to name that animal a sheep. Eve would have raised Cain to remind him of how in the Garden of Eden, God perfectly provided everything that they ever needed. But on the off chance that they ever thought that they were doing this on their own, giving as an act of worship was a reminder that everything they had came from God in the first place. But you probably noticed that these two gifts were received in opposite ways by God. What we read is that Abel brought the first and best from his flock, but then Cain brought some of his crops. And the difference in the gift hangs in the weight of those words. Ladies, imagine that one dark, romantic evening, your man got down on one knee, and he looked you in the eyes and he said, "Babe, the last 11 years of dating have been the best 11 years of my life. And for the rest of my life, I promise to give you some of my heart." What would you do in that moment? You would look back at that man and say, "My mother was right about you, all right? You are a loser. And what do you mean some of your heart? I want the best of your heart." Imagine a firefighter leaves your home that's burning down and says, "Good news, we were able to save some of your possessions, mostly the throw pillows." You would have to hide your disappointment and say, "How did you think that to save those first? Like, why would you prioritize to the decorations? This is neither first nor best." You see, in the New Testament book of Hebrews, in chapter 11, we discover why it was that Abel's gift was the one that was accepted. It says it was by faith that Abel brought a more acceptable offering to God than Cain did. Abel's offering gave evidence that he was a righteous man, and God showed his approval of his gifts. Although Abel is long dead, he still speaks to us by his example of faith. These two brothers, in their lives, they show us that some doesn't require faith. Leftovers aren't an act of worship because leftovers don't cost us anything. Let me get a quick feel for who's here today. Just show of hands. How many of you are leftover people? Right? While you're eating, you're always calculating what you can save for lunch tomorrow, right? You're putting it away. Like your Tupperware is stained red because of that time you microwave spaghetti. Like you're that kind of person. And then just honest confession, how many of you are just like not leftover people, right? Not really into eating it the next day. You're putting it away, but really the decision that you're making is to throw it away at a later date, right? You know that, we know that. There's no shame in it. No matter how you treat your food, you would have to admit that leftovers aren't the best because they weren't the first. And as your friend and as your pastor, I just want to say this as lovingly but as directly as possible. The trust and the worship that God desires is not what's left over after we've taken care of everything else. If you look at the gift Abel gave, he didn't say, "Well, first let me pay my bills. Then I'm going to put a little bit away for vacation and a little bit more for retirement. And then with what's left over, I can decide what I can afford to give." Instead, he gave the very first thing. It was his first check out the door, and it was technically a risky business proposition because he was giving the very best that he had earned to God first. And when he did, he was declaring that he believed that God had given it to him in the first place and that he trusted God to take care of the rest. He was declaring that he was grateful and that he knew he wasn't doing this all on his own. Maybe you've been to another church, or maybe you've been to Real Life in years past, and at some point during the service, they would pause and then they would pass a receptacle down the aisle to collect the giving for that day. And that, again, that would belong in the optional category, totally fine to do. I just want you to know why we don't here at Real Life. Is that when that happens, often what you'll see is that as it's coming towards someone, they kind of panic. And in a moment, they'll grab whatever loose cash they happen to have in their pocket that day and put it in as an obligatory participation in the service. And we just don't see that anywhere in Scripture. Every act of giving ought to be intentional and purposeful and a declaration of trust that God took care of me already. I'm going to trust him with the first and trust that he will take care of everything else. Now, it's usually at this moment in a message like this that someone starts saying, hey, it's starting to sound a little legalistic, right? It's kind of feeling like you're going to make me do something that I don't want to do. Is that where we're headed right now? Like, I'm not sure I'm ready for all that. And if that's where you're at, I just want to point you to this conversation between God and Cain in the midst of his dejection. God said, why are you so angry? Why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. But you must subdue it and be its master. In my line of work, I hear a lot of the reasons as to why people don't want to believe in God. And one of them that's as old as time, and there's probably someone saying it on TikTok right now, is that the God of the Old Testament seems really mean. And the critics, what they'll do is they'll juxtapose the two and say, the God of the Old Testament, he seems really cranky. The God of the New Testament, he seems nice. The God of the Old Testament, I don't want to hang out with him. The God of the New Testament seems like a good hang, and I can't reconcile the two. And if you've ever made that argument before, or that's something that you're wrestling with right now, may I draw you to the 4th chapter of the entire Bible and show you this interaction between God and someone that let him down. God didn't show up to chastise Cain. He didn't hit him with one of those, why can't you be more like your brothers? He pursued Cain. Cain wasn't trying to find God. God was trying to find him, and he counseled him, and he warned him. And he said, Cain, I know you don't see it right now, but there is a danger crouching at your door. And the longer that you ignore it, the longer that you choose not to fight against it, you are becoming more and more vulnerable to it taking over your life. You see this mention in verse 7 is the very first time the word sin is ever used in the Bible. And it wasn't about adultery, and it wasn't about murder, although that comes later. It was about a half-hearted gift to God. And did you notice how God described sin to Cain? He said it's crouching at his door, waiting to pounce, and it's eager to control every single one of us if we don't fight back. My guess is you've seen one of those National Geographic documentaries with the slow motion footage of a predator about to pounce on its prey. And you saw the lion crouch down in the tall grass, and no matter how much affection you have for that water buffalo, you know what's about to happen in the next couple seconds. And let me ask you, why does a predator crouch? Well, the first intention is to go undetected. Because the easiest fight for them to win is the one their prey doesn't know that they're in. It's really hard to fight back when you don't even know you're in a fight. But the second reason is that if they go detected, if someone sees them, then they seem a whole lot smaller than they really are. Less threatening. No need to take it seriously. See, the way sin works in our life is first, sin presents as a good thing. You might find yourself saying, I'm not a workaholic, I'm just productive. I'm really good at my job. I'm not arrogant. I just know I deserve a seat at the table. In fact, if people would listen to me more often, things would be going better around here. I'm not greedy. But if I give to every single person in need, when will they ever learn to take care of themselves? We actually present our sin as if it's virtuous. Then the second step is that sin presents as a flaw. Once we run out of those rebranding juices, we just say, we'll minimize it. We call it a mistake. We call it just a character flaw. I'm not in danger of it taking over my life. It's just something that I'm struggling with right now. And then before we know it, sin eventually takes over. It uncoils from its crouch and it dominates. And at first we can fight that temptation, but the longer that we entertain it and rebrand it and rationalize it, the more and more vulnerable we are becoming to the sin that's crouching at our door. What started as the occasional overindulgence uncoils into a full-blown addiction. And what started as the every once in a while look of lust uncoils into the only way that we can even see the opposite sex anymore. And what started as a hesitance to trusting God has now become a fearful scarcity mentality that resists giving anything away. God pursued Cain and he said, you're in danger and you don't even see it. And wouldn't you know it? God was exactly right. Look what happens in verse 8. It says, one day Cain suggested to his brother, let's go out into the fields. And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Afterward, the Lord asked Cain, where's your brother? Where's Abel? I don't know, Cain responded. Am I my brother's guardian? But the Lord said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed and banished from the ground, which has swallowed your brother's blood. No longer will the ground yield good crops for you, no matter how hard you work. From now on, you will be a homeless wanderer on the earth. Cain replied to the Lord, my punishment is too great for me to bear. You have banished me from the land and from your presence. You've made me a homeless wanderer. Anyone who finds me will kill me. The Lord replied, no, for I will give a sevenfold punishment to anyone who kills you. Then the Lord put a mark on Cain to warn anyone who might try to kill him. So Cain left the Lord's presence and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. God had attempted to warn Cain about the prowling lion. And what looked small and unthreatening is simply crouched and waiting to uncoil. You see, small cracks, they take over. What started in Cain's life as a reluctant gift toward God turned into dejection. And in his dejection, he grew jealous of his brother, and eventually his jealousy turned into anger. Like one small nick on the windshield, eventually a crack appeared and took over the whole window. See, I've yet to meet the person in my life that said, you know what, I woke up one day and I just decided that today was the day that I'm going to blow up my marriage. In the next 24 hours, I'm going to ruin my reputation. By Monday, I'm going to irrevocably damage my relationship with my daughter. No one chooses to do that in a small period of time. It starts small, and then it grows, and then it takes over. See, the crack that I found in this essential of giving as an act of worship is this crack. You, right now, and so do I, you right now, you have totally reasonable and 100% justifiable stories as to why giving isn't a great idea for you today. And if you told anybody these stories, they would make a ton of sense, and it's a reason to delay that act of obedience. Would you like to hear a couple of my stories right now? Our house, we have this small backyard, and it backs up to a hill. And on that hill is some shrubbery. And because the shrubbery is right there with nothing else, at times it invites wildlife to make its way into our backyard. And so in the last year, we've had a rattlesnake in our yard. We've had a coyote. And recently, we have been fighting a gang of raccoons that have been wreaking havoc in our backyard. Now, when I said the word raccoon, some of you imagined a picture of an animal with beady little eyes and a mask over its nose, and you thought that they are cute. And you are wrong. Raccoons are nature's terrorists, all right? And they've been in our backyard, and a couple weeks ago, there were 4 of them in our backyard, and they were messing around, and then I promise you, they got on their hind legs and looked in our window right at me as I was sitting on the couch as if to mock me as they were making a mess in our backyard. And so I had a plan. I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let out our dog, and our dog will chase them and bark and scare them, and then they'll go tell all the other raccoons, hey, stay away from that house. Like, that's bad news. You don't want to be there. What I did not do is the science that maybe my dog is faster than a raccoon. And so when I let out my dog caught one by the back of the neck and started fighting the raccoon. I thought about bringing the security footage to show all of you guys, but I didn't want to traumatize any children that were here today. But if you find me after the service, I'll show you the video. It was pretty awesome. So she's just winning this fight. I was so proud of her. She was doing great. And until one of the buddy raccoons comes back up the hill and sucker punches my dog and slices her ear open right here. Now, if you know anything about ears, they bleed like crazy. So our kitchen just turns into a horror movie, just blood everywhere. And one late night, unanticipated emergency vet bill later cost us $900 to get her ear stitched, and she's totally fine. But believe it or not, I did not have a raccoon attack savings account put away somewhere, so that money has to come from somewhere. And then on Christmas Eve, one of these uninvited intruders came into our boys' bedroom. Anyone else have leaks in their roofs over the last couple of weeks because of all the historic rain? Well, I did not have a historic rain savings account, so that money has to come from somewhere. And as my friend, if I was just telling you, hey, here's the reason why giving probably isn't a great idea for me right now, you'd look back at me and be like, yeah, I get it. That totally makes sense. Those things are crazy. I don't know if you understand how you could account for such things. But when those stories become a crack in my conviction, I can use them as justifiable reasons as to why giving as an act of worship isn't a timely investment. But then that crack of those small stories grows into a full-blown belief that I cannot survive without every dollar that I make. And then the next thing I know, jealousy over what others have takes over. And I start questioning whether God has truly, fully compensated me enough. See, when you and I give, especially when there's a reason not to, it reminds us that God's the one that gave it to us in the first place. And we trust Him to continue to provide. And as your friend, I can honestly tell you that God has grown my faith in this one area of life more than any other combined. What I believe about you is that you want to be a generous person. I believe that about 100% of us. All of us love the idea of using what God has given us right now to make a difference and to serve others. But unless anyone ever sat down and taught you how, you may not have the tools to prepare you or your family to be a generous person. And that's where we want to help. See, my friends Dwayne and Gina found themselves in a very similar situation, and they found both hope and help here at Real Life. And I'd love for you to hear their story.
My name is Dwayne. This is my wife Gina, and this is our real life story.
We've been attending Real Life Church since 2010. We both volunteer for the church. I serve currently as an usher, and Dwayne is on the safety team. So when we first started going to Real Life Church, our finances were in shambles. We were on the verge of bankruptcy. We were trying to keep up with the Joneses. We were taking this extravagant vacations, living on credit. So I would have a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of anxiety, a lot of panic attacks, because I did all the finances. So I knew everything, but we could barely make ends meet at home. We were, always juggling.
Where your money goes, your heart goes. And one of the things that we knew was we had to get our finances straight and get straight with God, because we were getting older and planning on retiring, and we needed to get it fixed. What
got us to wanting to give was we could do better. Part of that was trusting the Lord and giving. It was just getting into that mindset of giving, all of it is not ours. Everything's His. So that year we did our taxes, and we got our tax return was almost to the penny of what we gave to the church that year.
We trust in God, and God provided for us.
A couple years later, the church was offering Financial Peace University, and so we attended that class to help us get our finances in order to help us retire.
But they did in a God-based format of how you should be, tracking money and also taking care of other things as far as like trusts, wills, and everything else that your estate and everything is taken care of. So it's sound financial advice with a biblical perspective. We had a budget that we could actually track, make every dollar work for you instead of you working for your dollar.
If you're thinking about doing this class, I highly recommend it. I mean, we were literally at bankruptcy. By the end of the class, I think we were able to cut up 5 credit cards, and now we actually were able to retire 3 years earlier than planned and living very comfortably. Over time, it started getting easier because all of a sudden we started receiving blessings.
It wasn't just a monetary thing, but it was peace of mind and it was like health. Sometimes when you look back, you don't see it until you look back that, hey, that promotion just came out of nowhere.
It's hard to explain where the ease, my anxiety is gone, and I don't know how to explain it, but it can happen to anybody. It's a calmness that comes over you that I didn't have before. And I know it's because we're doing what he wants us to do. Living the biblical life, we're giving, we're trusting him with our finances.
Well, I'm so grateful for Dwayne and Gina, and I know what just happened. Is that there were about 100 of you right there that thought, man, I know I would benefit from that, and I know that I could probably use some help, and I have those same dreams and those same desires, and then almost simultaneously, there was another voice that said, I don't know if right now, and you're pretty busy, and is it kind of embarrassing that you don't have it figured out? Like, there is no shame in this. This is all helpful tools to make sure that you can set up to be who you genuinely desire to be. The person that God wants you to be, the one you want God to grow you into. And so financial peace actually starts here at Real Life here in 3 weeks. And you can just go to the Real Life app and you can sign up. There is childcare up to 4th grade. We want to do everything we can to remove any barrier that might prevent you from finding the financial freedom to being the person that will set you up to be the person that God wants you to be. And so I'm hoping that we will have around 200 people make that step to fill out the student building, to do this together and enjoy the peace of mind that comes from having a plan and trusting God with everything that he's given us. Every week throughout this series, I'm going to put 3 steps on the screen, and what I can promise is that you belong to one of them. There's not a single one of us that ever graduates from our journey in generosity, and so the first step would be moving from nothing to something. Maybe you've never given anything in your entire life. And you have lived under the assumption that not only was everything you made yours to use however you wanted, but you needed it all. And the idea of giving anything away makes you really nervous, and I'm hoping you will just give your very first gift that you have ever given, ever. And I can make 2 promises. Number 1, you'll survive. And then number 2, God is going to prove to you what he promised to do, that he's faithful and that he's got you, and that he's given you this, and he's going to continue providing everything that you need. Take your very first step. Make your very first gift in the next 3 weeks. The second step is moving from something to proportional. Maybe you've been that kind of loose cash giving kind of person, or you gave with what was left over. Proportional means I'm going to make a choice. A premeditated, a proactive, I'm going to choose a percentage of my income to give first and trust God with everything else. And if you adopt that behavior in 2026, I can make 2 promises. Number 1, you'll survive. And number 2, God will do exactly what he promised to do. Next week, we're going to unfurl all of his promises as to what that truly means for us, and I promise you they're really, really good. And then the third step is moving from proportional to generous. For some things in life, when you make a decision to start giving a percentage at some other season, what used to be sacrificial becomes affordable. God brought more resources to you. Life got more comfortable for you. Resources came that you weren't expecting, and it might be a good time to do a heart check and say, are we doing everything that he's asking us? Are we trusting him with everything? And maybe this is an opportunity to go even further, to make the most difference in this one life we have to live. Every single week, you're going to see those 3 steps. You know which one you belong to, and I'm hoping that it's not clarity that you get, but courage to take that step. Throughout this series, I'm going to try to do my best to make this unequivocally clear that all of this is wrapped in the message of grace. No one has given you more than God himself. He put that breath in your lungs right now, and he woke you up today. And he gave you sunsets and sunrises to enjoy, just to show off his creative majesty, and he gave you his son, the greatest act of generosity this world has ever seen. Every week that we gather, we remember the extreme generosity that gives us grace and hope in this life through an act called communion. And communion is a symbol of bread and juice that reminds us of Jesus on that cross, his body and his blood, and it allows us to reflect on the extreme giving nature of the God that we follow. Now, if you didn't grab those elements on the way in, but you'd like to participate, all you got to do is raise your hand. One of our awesome volunteers will make sure you get what you need. And if you're new and you're still asking all those questions, you're not rushed, you're not forced to participate, no obligation here. We're hoping you'll sit back and reflect a little bit on what you've heard today and remember that God is a God that gives you gifts, the gift of grace, the gift of life, the gift of hope. And I'm hoping that someday, very, very soon, you'll choose to begin your journey with Jesus, and it's a choice you'll never regret. For those of us that are followers of Jesus, this is our opportunity to remember, so you can take communion in your own time.